Welcome back to Deskers. I'm so excited to bring another incredible guest. Today we are meeting with Rajeev Daswani, who is the founder of a happiness coaching center and AHCC consultancies. He's a conscious coach and a speaker on well-being and conscious leadership. Welcome, Rajeev.
Hi, Maria. Thank you for having me here. Really excited.
I'm so excited to have you here and really excited to be talking about the work that you do and the potential for the work that you do with young people and people from around the world. But before we get into those details, I'd like to take you back in time to when you were an adolescent. I know that back in that time, you were interested in business and entrepreneurship, which really surprises me because entrepreneurship is now becoming more formally announced to young people. Right. Who did you know that made you think, I want to go into business, but more than that, I want to be an entrepreneur?
That's interesting. Well, I guess it goes back to my roots, right? I come from a business family, right? So my granddad set up his business when he was, I don't know if you go back to history, right? This whole partition and all that. My granddad left India and he went to Africa and he started developing his business there. And I remember his stories, right? And he always told me that you have to always roll up your sleeves and go out there and make something new. And that's what, man is made to do, right? So I was really excited by that story of his. And to see that, he was able to create from nothing, to me, it was very exciting. And to see that obviously through my dad as well and being part of a business family, I realized that, that was something I was going to do. So I started getting excited about it. And I realized that there's no limit to what you could do in business, right? You could set up your own. So that was always something that I kind of had in me. I don't know why.
Amazing. And I know that you set up an engineering company. Tell us about that and how you went from engineering to what you're doing today.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. When Marami came along, it is a plating company. And I saw that in this part of the world, there is oil and gas, which is a predominant industry. And most of electroplating, is focused, usually was focused in industries, factories, in countries where there's a lot of manufacturing. But in this part of the world, oil and gas was the main line. And they were getting coatings done outside. They were getting sent to Scotland and all these other places. And I figured out, why don't we just do it? Why don't we direct it to a specific industry, zoom in, and look at refurbishing components instead of, them buying new. Now, Maria, what's interesting is at that point in time, a lot of the electroplating business in this part of the world was focused on gold and they were looking at, all the structures. And as you know, this part of the world was really good they wanted the decorative coatings. Industrial coatings are really rare. So I just wanted to kind of direct it into a different area. And there were very few people doing it at that point in time. And my background, coming with a marketing and finance background, this is back then when websites were not happening and were not prevalent at that point in time. And this industry was really at a cusp of beginning, you can say. And I remember being one of the first organizations out there to have my website. We became ISO certified. We went 24/7 customer service. So I started to apply a lot of these things that in the future, moving forward to my next career, had the human touch. I started to bring the human touch, and I applied it at the principle, at the beginning of the setup.
Amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Okay, so you went from that. Take us through that timeline. How much time in that career span did it take you to turn around and say, wait a minute, I don't want to be doing this predominantly anymore. I know it's still going on, but you changed it and you decided to go down the route that you're on right now, which is focused on happiness and well-being and conscious leadership. Where did that come into the time frame?
Great question. So let me quickly just put this in perspective. Marami still continues. I'm still the CEO of it. We still run it. But I also then set up a new project. And as an entrepreneur, as you all know, the idea is to put a team in place that allows the company to run. We have a vision and purpose, and we're driving towards that. And which gave me time. So which enabled me to then focus on my, on my passions as well. Now, don't get me wrong, I love this as well, right? But that's the point. What I learned from Arami was there were so many lessons, and it continues to teach me. But what I learned mostly was that, when you love what you do it with love, right? And the most important thing, Maria, that I found really interesting was when you put people before process. And I'm not saying process is not important. Of course, for all of us engineering students out there, whoever's in engineering, process is important, right? However, so are the humans at your organization. And that's what every leader needs to start to realize. We are all working with people, and people are not, it's not just the 8 hours that they're at the office, but they're the whole package. And so as an organization, as we were growing and working with large organizations, I started to see a pattern with a lot of our clients where process was dominating everything. I'll give you an example. And you'll understand why this other company started out. There was a point in time when I was working with industries, as we were growing and we were working with larger and larger companies, relationships that we had developed when we first started working with some of these clients, it was a very personalized relationship. I had built a lot of trust, and we built a lot of personalism. There was a time when they could call you at 2 a.m. and say, "Hey, pick up a job, Raj," and you'd pick it up, right? There was no questions asked. You wouldn't say, "Hey, send me a delivery note and this document, that document." And even though processes were there, it didn't supersede the relationship. Okay, so when someone would say to me, "I will release a purchase order, but just get the job done, please," we say, "Don't worry about it. Okay, we'll get a job," because it's urgent. And to us, everyone's an extended family. So our clients, we understand that they have to then deliver their parts to the end users. So we developed a family relationship with everyone. And we said, "Listen, we're here for each other. You need this job urgent, we'll figure it out. I know the documents will come, so we will not worry." As the company started growing larger and larger, and as process started to take over, I saw this. Now we've zoomed 7-8 years forward, Maria, where things were stopping based on process, right? So suddenly they're like, "Oh, we can't touch the job. Purchase order hasn't come." I'm like, "Well, it'll come." "No, sir," because last time they said, "Don't do it without." So suddenly you started to see process take over the relationships. Also, what I started realizing is that the personal relationships had stopped. People didn't know each other as well. It just became, the decisions were really becoming monotonous. In other words, based on either black and white, which is okay, but where's the humanism, right? Where's that touch? Now, around us, what I started seeing is everyone was always searching, for happiness. Everyone's like, "Oh, I want to be happy," but they're always complaining about things, Maria. And I was wondering, as a leader in a company, and this is reversing this a bit for you. A lot of times when you think about well-being, you always hear the side of people on who work at the organization. They go, "Oh, we want to be happy," but we never hear it from the other side, right? From the leader's perspective, right? For me, I love this company. I love my people. I was so excited to have everyone there. I was honored to have them at my company, as I was with my clients and my stakeholders. But what I realize is, as much as you want to try to make everyone happy around you, unfortunately, happiness is a self-owned journey. You have to own your own happiness. You can't do it for somebody else, right? You can pay someone great money. You can give them a great package. You can do everything possible to make the company more fun. But what you cannot do is manage them internally. And when there's things outside of work that were impacting some people, they would bring it with them, right? And I started seeing that in industry, and I stepped back and I said, well, how can we change this? How can we bring more humanization to an organization so that, we start to connect with our people, but then the people can connect with themselves? Because what I saw was that those people that were consuming, self-help were always looking at somebody else, and this guru culture was coming up everywhere. If you remember YouTube, people Google everything. What does YouTube say, right? At one point in time, Maria, I felt that we were doing everything wrong, right? Because you go to YouTube and say, "Are you doing this? Well, you're doing this wrong." And I go, it took the power away from us, right? So now, you see industry getting process controlled, the human relationships are reducing, right? 2, when you lose yourself and you don't know where to go, you go to the self-help stuff, and it's telling you what to do. It's not letting you think, it's not letting you connect, it's just going. So I said, wait a second, this doesn't feel right. Yeah. What can we do about it? So there was 2 things. I could sit there and complain like everybody else, or I could be part of the solution. So maybe that's when I started realizing is like, wait a second, I need to work on first thing, which is my happiness. Why am I feeling so lost? So I started to go within. I started to ask myself questions. And every time I typed on YouTube or something and I found someone saying something, it wasn't resonating anymore. I was like, no, it doesn't feel right. It's like being in a boat and someone's trying to row for you and then they just jump away and then you're sitting in a boat all alone. I'm like, well, I don't know how to row, right? What do I do? So as I started to, so this is where I found myself and I said, okay, so what do I do? So I started to work with, some amazing people that came along and they said, hey, Raj, you should try this, you should try this. And as you start to try different things, meditation, internalizing, started to look at assessments, start measuring myself to see how I was showing up. I started realizing, whoa, there's a whole world inside that we can figure out, right? Which gives you tools, which allows you to start to see, which allows you to identify where you are. And then once you know where you are and you know where you want to go, you can start to move in the right direction. So Maria, it's all about internalizing. And that's when I decided to set up a company that would help people go and get the tools themselves so that they could then go within and then bring that to work. You see how the
yeah, and I find that really interesting. So just to backtrack a little bit, a young person watching this right now would have heard you say that you were interested in business and entrepreneurship. You set up an engineering company. Was that something that you wanted to do because you love to do that? Or was that something that you did because it was encouraged by people in your life, like parents or teachers?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was encouraged. So I'm not an engineer, by the way, right? Our family had invested in different projects. And this is one project that the dad had invested in. And he wanted to actually exit, so he had just set it up as an investor. And I jumped in to help him out real quick to help him get out of it, to be honest. But I saw something there, and that's when my entrepreneurial spirit said, okay, I'll take over this, and I'll take it independently and turn it around. And like you said, initially the drive was there from the very beginning that we are a business family, so we're going to jump in and help out.
And that's great, but that's what we wanted to kind of tap into, because I know that young people right now, many of them are worried about making the wrong choice and they're being guided by adults in their lives. So what I also heard you say is that you did that journey. It was a successful journey and it's not closed. It's that you also realized, wait, there's more to my career. And I want to tap into something that I'm interested in, but I still have that going. It's still thriving on the side. And that's another important thing that we talk about when we work with the youth. It's that, why do you have to choose just one thing? Why can't you have a few things going on? And that's the reality of the future of work in what we're seeing. So now talk to us about what it's like to wear those multiple hats. So in the one hand, you're living in a world where people are really tapping into happiness and working on professional and personal development and really finding ways to feel more fulfilled in their lives. But at the same time, you're also wearing a very serious hat in terms of the company, Marami Metal, where you're trying to find, new ways to remain sustainable and stay competitive in a very difficult industry. How do you jump from one hat to the other? What's the strategy?
Great question. And in fact, I want to take a step back to your question and just redirect it a bit in that with the answer. One is, yes, a lot of young people will, a lot of times adults will address or give you a solution and say, hey, listen, try this out. But it doesn't mean just because you try it out, you can't personalize it. You can't still inject what you love doing. You see, I was not an engineer, so I didn't come with the engineer thinking. Right? I came with my fresh ideas and I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So when I jumped in, the first condition I did was, if I jump in, then I have to do this my way, which is not going to be the way the industry does it, because I don't see it that way. Right? The industry was all about, this is the way it's done. I didn't see it that way. I said, well, it's a service after all, so we have to be human. So I wanted to bring the human element. So I started injecting that from the get-go. Right? So one is, yes, sometimes you do have to make different decisions, but you can always bring yourself to the table. And that's what you have to realize is you can do what you love to do, and you can also find what you love to do in everything, if that makes any sense, right? So when you feel like you're cornered, and this is out to the young people, when you say, well, listen, this might be the next stepping stone to get there, the question is, if you're working, first we define the there, Maria, it's the purpose behind it, right? What are we trying to, what's driving it? And secondly, we also define how can the step you're taking right now still work towards getting you there, even if it's not your ideal case scenario. Make sense? So one. Two is how do I multitask? Well, or how do I manage to wear two hats? Well, the second hat came up because this hat took me there. If it hadn't been for Marami, I wouldn't have been able to get there. Do I do it because I'm passionate? Absolutely. But my passion never changed. My passion was always about, empowering others, using my vehicles to help others move forward. Marami was an amazing vehicle, continues to be one. And today, we're driving it in a direction which is so unknown. I'll give you an example, Maria. Today, we're moving towards sustainability, even in an industry which is not known for it. Taking steps, baby steps, you can say, right, to find alternative coatings that are greener, right? Those are not stuff that's been done before, but we're looking at things. A lot of our clients don't even, some of them don't even want to switch. Like, no, we're happy where we are. But we're like, listen, what would it take to do this together? How can we make this important to you, right? We have to be part of the solution. So we start to take those steps. Why? Because it's in line with what I'm trying to do. Well-being is not just about practicing a few things and then everything has to be aligned, Maria, which takes us to the next part of the other hat that I wear. In those organizations, there's people just like in my organization, right? So do I see a difference? No, the thought processes are very similar, but the experiences that we've had and that I've had now, until you've tried it yourself, until you've experienced it yourself and you've seen your organization change for it, and you know that it works and it helps organizations, you can bring that as an option for them to also exercise. So if what I'm saying makes any sense, is my passion is and always has been driven by what I've been involved with. All of these are vehicles to get me to live those passions, if that makes any sense.
Totally does. And it resonates very much. And I think what's important, and I like that you brought this word up, passion. I think it's sometimes overused and misunderstood, especially with the youth. I think sometimes the perspective of passion is like it's something that you're going to feel and you're going to love to do, but it's almost like airy fairy. And what we know, and anytime I meet with an entrepreneur, is passion is a feeling of joy. It's wanting to do what you do when you wake up every day, but the work involved doesn't mean that it's going to be smooth sailing. Work is can be challenging, but as long as you still find that joy and that internal interest in doing what you do, which I think sounds like what you were just describing to us, if I'm not misunderstanding you.
Well, absolutely. And there's one more word that you have to add there is the word impact. See, purpose is great when it's driven individual purpose. So people go, I have to find my purpose. And that's, again, another word that's being overused. But when we think about why we need to know why, is because ultimately it's going to have a result, which is the impact it creates. So if we start to ask ourselves this one really imperative question is, how does my life count? And then you establish everything that you're doing in your life to make it count. Then you see, Maria, then the answer is not as black and white. You could be doing multiple things, but your life still counts, right? As an individual, as an organization, same thing. What's the impact we are creating as an organization, right? Through our purpose. Yes. So then it doesn't make a difference whether you are just, whether you're selling widgets or you're, as long as your drive is something bigger, right? So absolutely, passion is about, connecting to your bigger purpose that enables you to lead that impact. And like you said, it gives you the resilience. Well, what does it basically do? Does it make you feel excited every day? Yes. Not because you're doing things you just enjoy doing all the time. You're going to do things you don't enjoy doing. Right? So well said, right? You're going to have to do things that may not be fun, but there's something that gives you that resilience to keep on going. That's what we're talking about. That's the passion we're talking about.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. Let's talk about some of your career journey highlights. You mentioned that entrepreneurship has been a real highlight for you and continues to teach you, and you're really enjoying that process. You're focused on innovation and transformation. And as the founder of a small company, you learned how to show up as a leader, which truly defines where the organization goes. What does that mean? A leader who defines where the organization goes.
But it almost sounds like every leader should define where organizations go, right? But then it also implies that everyone knows what they're doing, right? Mm-hmm. Well, let me remind you, no one was given a manual, right? Well, some people have. When someone else didn't know where they were going, they figured it out. But the beautiful thing as a leader is we don't always have a manual. And that means that we have to and will probably make mistakes. We'll probably end up at a dead end. We'll probably end up at a T-junction. We'll have to decide if right or left. We're going to make some good decisions. We're going to make some bad decisions, right? But ultimately, we're going to have to make decisions. Yes? So what I'm trying to get at is that ultimately, every single one of us, when we are in this journey of life, we're going to have to learn along the way. And being part of a small company, that learning has helped me direct the growth of the organization. It's helped me transform not only myself as an individual, but also everyone around me. A little story. When my company was originally set up, when I first started, I had this vision statement and a mission statement, just like everybody else, and objectives, and we want to be the biggest, the best, right? And years into it, like I told you, as we started to, when I started to ask deeper questions, I landed upon this one tool that said, that was focusing on culture and values. Let's do that, right? I wanted to understand, what are my values, right? Because I said, okay, never done it, but let's do values. And then we'll decide the values of the organization. I'd already decided the values of the organization before I'd done this earlier, yeah? And I had my vision, my mission statement. It sounded like I had everything in place. But as usual, like every organization, you'll have moments where you'll have the silo effect happening with organization bickering, and some, in every company, you'll have a little bit of everything. And I wanted to improve our team. I wanted to improve the way our company felt. So I said, okay, let's do this exercise. And I landed upon this tool called the Barrett's Culture tool. And something about the tool I loved. It said something about the 7 levels of consciousness. I said, interesting. He said values there can be some limiting values and be some good values. But before we do the values of an organization, you should do a leadership value. So I did my leadership value. And I got this entropy score, which is basically an engagement score, a score of entropy is wasted energy. So when you waste energy, the opposite of engagement, right? And the lower the entropy score, the better, apparently. And then the higher, the worse. Well, you won't believe it. My entropy score was very low. That means people were very connected and engaged to me. So I was like really happy. I said, wow, that's fantastic. My team loves us. Okay, this is a good start. So I was very excited, Maria. And then came the values. These are the values that I wanted, okay? But these are the present values that were showing up in my organization. Interesting. They were not all the values that I wanted, but they were showing up. But guess what? There was another list. Values that people wanted that I didn't know, that were also showing that, that they wanted in this organization. In other words, if I wanted to improve the level of engagement in an organization, I had to really have a look at not only my own values as a leader, have a look at the values that are actually showing up in my organization. Some had to be worked on, but there was also other values that people naturally wanted that were not there. But you know what opened my eyes the most, Maria, was when I started to see what people wanted to see in me that I wasn't bringing to the table. See, I always thought that my values were very transparent and I was very open, but there was other things that people in my organization wanted to see that I wasn't bringing to the table. And only when I could see what I hadn't seen could the transformation begin. So what I bring to you is, as leaders, if we want to lead an organization, we want to transform the organization, we must start with looking in the mirror and seeing what we don't see. Because what we see, we work on, but what we don't see, we tend to ignore. It was what I couldn't see that changed the way the company started to act. And you won't believe it, Maria, we then defined our values again, but based on the desired values of the entire organization. No longer was about me. It was about all of us together, because we all represented a culture. A culture is not one person. It's all of us, right? So you see, suddenly it became a piece of everyone, right? And that was already where transformation began. So does that kind of answer your question on journey?
It does. And I think that you're taking us down different theories of leadership, which is really, really interesting. Definitely a conversation I know that our business students would want to have, and looking at transformational leadership as opposed to transactional leadership, so on and so forth. But what an incredible journey that you've taken us on. I could keep going and keep going, but we do have to bring it to a wrap. I know that I've taken a lot of your time. Rajeev, if you could leave young people with one thought, one thing that you want them to remember in terms of preparing for their future career, what would that be?
I would say, Maria, that we all, not just young people, but yes, young people especially, is be brave enough to look in the mirror. And now I'll explain that. Usually when we think of a mirror, we see a reflection. And what do we see in the mirror? We see what we want to see. But what do we also see? We usually pay attention to all the flaws, right? We don't see ourselves as, as the image that's in front of us. We start looking at some other things. But also we often fail to see what we don't know. So the more you get to know yourself, the better you will land, because you'll be able to move yourself in the right direction. Everyone wants to grow in a specific way. Everyone has a vision of where they want to be. We've not defined it. You see, it took me 30 something years to start to define it, to even know I needed to define it, Maria. Had I done this, 10 years or 15 years earlier, it would have changed my entire life. Yeah. So my first, and I always tell youngsters, is the first thing you must do is start to ask deeper questions, start to answer questions like purpose, start to look at your values, start to measure your natural behavior. The more you look in the mirror and start to measure with these tools that are out there. The best thing is there's so many tools, Maria. I can mention a million names, but it doesn't make a difference. Just start to look at them, because when you see how you show up, you start to change and transform yourself in a direction that enables you to go towards your purpose and creating that impact in your life. It'll start to answer those questions that you're wondering about, clarity on what do I do? What's my passion? What do I put my energy in? Because you start to answer bigger questions because you know yourself better. So that's what I would recommend for youngsters.
Fantastic. I love it. The depth of getting to know who you are. Wonderful. And that brings us to the end of an incredible conversation. Today, we were speaking with Rajeev Daswani, who is the founder of a happiness coaching center and AHCC consultancies, a conscious coach, a speaker on well-being and conscious leadership. Thank you for watching, and we will see you at our next Desk Careers Digital Spotlight.